I always thought I knew what fear felt like. As a child, barely over the age of 12, I was surrounded by ghost stories, urban legends, and late-night horror movies. I reveled in them, my heart racing with the thrill of the unknown, because I knew they belonged to a world I could step into briefly, knowing I would return to safety. They were, after all, the monsters under the bed that never actually reached for your feet. But what I didn't realize was that true fear wasn't something you could conjure from a darkened corner or a flickering screen. True fear wasn't about what lurked in the shadows. It was about what you saw in broad daylight, something so real, so raw, that it would haunt you long after the nightmares faded. I thought I understood horror, but I didn't. Not until I saw it with my own eyes. Until the building behind my school became more than just a silent, well-kept structure at the edge of my view. This is the mortuary behind my school. For months of not seeing anyone inside its compound, I assumed the building was abandoned. It looked too pristine to be in regular use, yet there was something about its stillness that didn't feel quite right. The white walls were spotless, the hedges neatly trimmed, and the gate stood as if guarding nothing. I remember thinking it must have been an office once, or maybe someone's private property, now left empty. It blended into the background, easy to ignore, unremarkable. That changed on a rainy afternoon. It was the sound of the rain that day, soft, steady, lulling me into a trance. I remember doodling in my notebook, my attention half on the teacher and half on the grey sky beyond the window. That was when I noticed movement. A group of people had gathered at the building's entrance, huddled together under umbrellas. I leaned closer to the window, curious. At first, I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. There were too many people, their faces drawn and somber. Then the trolley rolled into view, and my stomach dropped. It gleamed under the dim light, its metallic surface slick with rain. Draped across it was a white sheet, and underneath the unmistakable shape of a body. It wasn't the kind of stillness you see in someone sleeping. There was a heaviness, a lifeless weight that seemed to radiate from whatever lies underneath the white sheet. I stared at the contours of the body that lies beneath the sheet, shoulders that slumped inwards, feet that jutted slightly upward, as if tied together, a sharp dip in the middle where the torso must have been. Then there was the family. Their grief was the kind you couldn't look away from, no matter how much you wanted to. A woman, perhaps the mother, dropped to her knees as the trolley passed her, her wails piercing through the rain. She clutched at the air, her fingers trembling as if trying to grasp something that had slipped away forever. A man, maybe her husband, tried to lift her up, but his own body betrayed him. His shoulders shook and his face was crumpled in a silent scream. And the others, each one seemed to carry the weight of their own sorrow. Some clutched tissues to their faces, others stood with their heads bowed, tears dripping into the puddles at their feet. One child, no older than me, stood apart from the adults, their face streaked with rain and tears, their eyes wide and empty. But what struck me most wasn't the adults or even the trolley. It was the body. The sheet had shifted slightly as the trolley moved, revealing something smaller, thinner than I had expected. A child, The outline of the head, too small, of the arms, too short. I remember sitting there, staring at that lifeless form and thinking, they're smaller than me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the trolley. I saw the child's body, the way it seemed so delicate beneath the sheet. I saw the mother's face, her mouth open, in a scream I could still hear, even though I hadn't actually heard it. Over the following weeks, it got worse. Every time I sat by the window, I caught glimpses of new processions, different families, different trolleys, but the same unbearable grief. One night, I dreamt that I was on the trolley. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I was trapped under the sheet, the weight of it pressing down on me. Faces I didn't recognize stared down at me, their eyes hollow, their mouths whispering words I couldn't hear. When I woke up, my chest felt heavy, as if the dream had followed me into the waking world. The nightmares didn't stop. Some nights, I would see the mother from that first day, her face twisted into something almost monstrous as she reached for the trolley. Other nights, it was the child, their small lifeless shape, standing in the corner of my room, watching me with empty eyes. Even now, decades later, as a grown-up who had witnessed the passing of friends and close relatives, I can't forget the trolley, the shit, the family. It's all there, like a scar etched into my memory. Maybe it's because I was a child myself, too young to process the rawness of grief. Or maybe it's because that mortuary forced me to confront the reality of death before I was ready. I didn't just hear about it or watch it unfold on a screen. I saw it up close, in the tears of a family and the fragile shape of a body, too small to have departed this world, or so I have thought. Fictional horror fades when the credits roll. Ghost stories lose their grip when the fire dies out, but real horror never leaves. It's in the quiet moments, the dark corners, the memories you can't escape. And I will never escape the mortuary behind my school.